I remember when I was kind of coming of age, and I think I was in undergrad, this movie, The Matrix, came out. And everybody loved The Matrix, and Neo, was this hero because he could see the data beyond the world, and he could see, when he looked at the world, he just saw it as a collection of ones and zeros, and that was the truth. And I think that is a myth that kind of we still want to hold on to, that somehow if we get access to the data, if we can see beyond this world, behind it, into data, then we know the truth. We shouldn't see data as an opportunity to get beyond the human or beyond our world, but rather to connect more closely to it, that it's a starting point for asking questions about why we represent the world in particular ways. Really, so much has changed about the way we see and understand data in the public realm. The message that somehow data are just about bringing transparency and democracy and access, I think we're kind of past that. Telling people that data can be biased, that can be sexist, it can be racist, it can have invisible assumptions and values and absences and limitations, wasn't going to be a new message, but rather the book had to focus on how do we still work with data knowing that it's flawed. At the end of the day, if we do think about data as the evidence through which we make claims about our world, we still need to do that. The problem is when we assume that this inherited evidence, often from unfamiliar sources and places, can be just inherently reliable. So how can we think critically about data? What does it mean to think critically about data? And my argument is that it means paying attention to the context in which data are made, but also in which they're used. And this is where I say we need to move from talking about data sets to data settings. The idea of a set implies something that's complete. It's closed. It's transportable. Often we learn about sets in math class, and we may think that a set is somehow just a collection of facts, or that they're objective. But when we transfer to the language of settings and start thinking about data as connected to places and part of systems of knowledge, part of practices, cultural practices that may be rooted in disciplinary histories, national histories, linguistic histories, technological histories, the use of certain kinds of instruments. One thing that I think people don't realize is that the way we make data is constantly changing. We're always revising, saying, oh, well, we think there's a better way, or we can have a higher resolution data, or we can have more data points. And those changes have a kind of historical context. And how do we think about data as being part of that history? These days, the work we're doing, is so connected to these broader communities of discourse and dialogue. And I think it's important for students to remember that when they're reading something or they're having their thoughts or thinking about the contribution they're making, it should always be in dialogue with this broader community. And so I think the more access they can get to, other people in that community and perspectives, that can help them build that dialogue and see their work as connected. There's this sense that we're all just users, and that we should be able to, when we log on or we boot up our system or we open a piece of software, we open a data set, that it doesn't matter where we are or who we are, or where that technology or data came from either. And it's just not true. And I think we need to do more work to investigate the places and the people and the assumptions behind the technologies we use. And I'm really trying to do that for data and give people new tools to think critically about data. So when they encounter an unfamiliar data set for the first time, they don't just, because they don't know its background, they don't just assume that it's a set of facts, but rather they see it as cultural artifacts that are tied to some broader system of knowledge that may be invisible, but that they can learn about.